This is an example of using Scratch and Finch to control the Finch robot. I want to emphasize the parallelism between the sprites on the screen and the Finch in the real world and show that the same program in some sense can be used in both cases. So let's make the sprite change colors. I've pre-built a couple of costumes so that the sprite is either green or red, and now I'm going to write a script that will change the color of the sprite's outfit. You've done this before maybe, and so we'll say switch costume from, and it's currently red, and then we'll switch costume to green. So I've pre-built the two costumes, and let's run this program. We switch and we see what happens, red to green, and it stays green. I was hoping to actually make it switch back and forth, so let's put this into some kind of loop using the control structures. So we'll say forever, go back and forth between red and green, red and green, red and green. So if we click this, then we see that it stays green. Why is that? Well, that's because these commands occur so quickly that it was green, it went to red and immediately back to green, and it looks like it's green the whole time. So let's add a little bit of extra time in there so we can actually see it switch back and forth. So we add some time between red and green, and we can see how that looks. Oh, it is changing. If we look carefully over here, it's changing, but it's changing very quickly. That's because it switched to green and then immediately switched to red. So we need to add some time after the switch to green as well. And we'll put that in right there. So now let's see what we've got. Perfect. Going back and forth between red and green with about 1 second between the two switches. So that seems like a little bit long. I'm going to change that to ½ a second, and then we'll see how we can do the same thing using the Finch robot, which can also change the color of the light in its nose. So let's think about the structure of this program, and instead of switching the costume, we're going to change the LED color of the light. And so we want to go to red, so we'll give it 100% red. And we can see what that does. If you look over here on the screen, you see I've got a movie going that shows what my Finch robot is doing. So if I click this, we can see that it switches to red, and that's because I have red at 100%, green and blue at 0, and so it's switched to red. And I wanted to go back and forth between red and green, so let's pick up the Finch color changing command again, and this time let's put it to green. And if we go ahead and click that, we see that it's going to be red, and now it's green, but it stays that way. And again, we have the same structural issues as before. We want to do this many, many times. So let's get our forever command. And then we also would like to wait between the changes so that we can see what's going on. So notice what I've done here. I've basically made the exact same program for the sprite, except for in this case, because there is a corresponding command for the Finch, so switch your costume, which ends up being a color change for the cat sprite. Down here we're changing the color of the light on the Finch, and we have exactly the same program. So let's look over here and see what happens to our Finch robot as we implement this command. And sure enough, we can see it switching back and forth between red and green with about a ½ a second between. And so we'll stop that. And then as usual, if we want to do both things, we can use our event control and put a when green flag is clicked, then we can do both of them simultaneously. So you want to watch the cat and watch the Finch change color. And sure enough, here's the cat changing color, green, red, green, red, green, red, and here is the Finch changing color over here. And I want to emphasize that it's the exact same program. We just had to write it for the sprite, but then we can apply the corresponding commands to the Finch, and we end up with the same thing.